Teeth, a very important part of our bodies. Beyond their function of chewing and grinding food, teeth also play a crucial role in aesthetics. Humans have always sought ways to achieve bright, even perfectly aligned teeth through many different methods. But if we set aside those modern standards of beauty and travel back tens, even hundreds of millions of years into the past, you will discover a startling truth. Nature has never cared about beauty, the nods. The only thing it pursues is survival. In the prehistoric world, teeth did not need to be straight, did not need to be white, and certainly did not need to be beautiful. Imagine a jaw shaped like a shovel, used to scoop food straight from the ground. Another creature possessed thousands of fine, hair-like teeth, packed tightly together solely to filter tiny organisms from the water. And there were even predators with teeth coiled like a saw blade, hidden deep inside the mouth. Every bite a true nightmare for their prey. These jaws are vivid proof of the ruthless creativity of evolution. They show that in order to survive, nature is willing to break every pattern humans once considered normal. In today's video, we will embark on a journey to explore the prehistoric animals that possess the strangest jaws ever to exist on Earth, where every tooth and every jaw joint tells a terrifying, bizarre, and deeply fascinating story of the primal struggle for survival. When we think of fearsome predators in the prehistoric world, most of us immediately imagine creatures with long fangs, wide jaws, and rows of sharp teeth like wolves or tigers. But Thylacoleo, the animal known as the marsupial lion of Australia, followed a completely different path. And that is precisely what made its jaws uniquely terrifying. At first glance, Thylacoleo does not impress with the number of its teeth. In fact, it had far fewer teeth than most modern carnivorous mammals. Yet evolution chose to trade quantity for quality. Thylacoleo's two incisors were anything but small or harmless. They evolved into curved, razor-sharp blades capable of slicing through flesh with a single, precise bite. Rather than tearing prey apart with repeated bites, Thylacoleo was built to deliver a swift, decisive kill, like a fatal strike. Even more astonishing, studies suggest that Thylacoleo's bite force, relative to its body size, may have surpassed that of almost any carnivorous mammal that ever lived. This made it the strongest biting mammal of its time. With a short but exceptionally powerful jaw, each snap of Thylacoleo's bite was like a living hydraulic clamp, fast, efficient, and leaving its prey no chance to resist. This bizarre jaw also clearly reflects the harsh prehistoric environment of Australia. In an ecosystem lacking large placental predators, Thylacoleo rose to the top as an apex hunter, often targeting prey larger than itself. Its blade-like jaws not only allowed it to bring down prey quickly, but also reduced the risks involved in hunting, a crucial advantage in the unforgiving natural world. Thylacoleo represents the ruthless optimization of a predator. Then Atopodentatus stands as a perfect example of a completely opposite evolutionary path. Bizarre, hard to comprehend, yet entirely logical when placed in the context of its time. Atopodentatus lived during the Triassic period, more than 240 million years ago, at a time when life on Earth was only beginning to recover from the largest mass extinction in history. The oceans then were a chaotic world, where organisms were experimenting with every possible strategy for survival. And Atopodentatus was one of evolution's boldest experiments. From the moment it was first discovered, the fossilized skull of Atopodentatus left scientists perplexed. Its jaws looked nothing like those of any marine reptile previously known. The snout was wide and flattened, while the teeth were neither sharp nor curved, but thick, short, and packed tightly together like rows of nails. For many years, paleontologists fiercely debated the true function of this strange jaw. Some hypothesized that Atopodentatus was a predator specialized in crushing hard shells, while others believed it used its jaws to dig along the seafloor. The turning point came only when more complete fossil reconstructions became available. At that point, a bold yet convincing hypothesis emerged. Atopodentatus was one of the earliest plant-eating marine reptiles ever to exist. The jaws of Atopodentatus functioned essentially as a seaweed scraping machine. The upper jaw acted as a pressing surface, while the broad lower jaw, armed with dense teeth, scraped and shaved algae and plant matter clinging to rocks or ancient coral reefs. Rather than chasing prey, Atopodentatus slowly swam close to the seafloor, using its bizarre jaws to harvest a food source that seemed meager, yet was extraordinarily abundant. In an ocean where most marine reptiles were predators, Atopodentatus chose a path with far less competition, feeding on plants. It was a risky choice, but also a remarkably wise one. By doing so, it tapped into a stable energy source, avoided dangerous hunts, and escaped direct competition with more aggressive carnivores. From an evolutionary perspective, the jaws of Atopodentatus might be considered ugly, even grotesque. But within its environment, this design was nearly perfect. Every tooth and every jaw surface served a single purpose: maximizing food intake in a world rebuilding itself after catastrophic extinction. If we view the prehistoric world through modern human eyes, we are often drawn to predators with sharp teeth and fearsome appearances. Yet Edmontosaurus, a seemingly gentle herbivorous dinosaur, possessed one of the most mechanically complex jaws ever to appear on Earth. Its strength did not lie in bite force or sheer size, but in the way its jaws functioned as a precisely engineered system. At first glance, the skull of Edmontosaurus is not particularly striking. Its flat, duck-like snout leads many to assume it simply grabbed plants and swallowed them whole. But when scientists examined its internal structure more closely, they realized this was not a simple mouth, but a food processing machine designed for continuous long-term operation. Edmontosaurus did not have just a single row of teeth, but tooth batteries on vertical stacks of teeth arranged in columns. Each side of the jaw could contain hundreds of teeth, and over its lifetime, thousands of teeth would grow, wear down, and be replaced in sequence. Thanks to this mechanism, Edmontosaurus almost never lost chewing efficiency. Despite processing large quantities of tough fibrous plants every day. More importantly, its jaws did not simply open and close in a single motion. When chewing, the lower jaw could slide slightly sideways, producing a grinding motion similar to that seen in mammals. This was extremely rare among dinosaurs, allowing Edmontosaurus to break down plant material before swallowing, rather than relying entirely on digestion afterward. During the Cretaceous period, as plants evolved thicker fibers and natural defensive structures, efficient chewing became a vital survival advantage. Edmontosaurus did not need to seek out easy-to-chew food, but could exploit nearly every plant resource in its environment. This refined jaw mechanism helped make it one of the most widespread and successful herbivorous dinosaurs. Edmontosaurus demonstrates that in evolution, efficiency can be more important than strength. It did not dominate through violence, but through jaws that worked with precision, stability, and almost relentless consistency. If Edmontosaurus represents refinement in chewing mechanics, then Shantungosaurus pushed the concept to an entirely different level, the level of scale and ecological impact. It is considered the largest duck-billed dinosaur ever discovered, a true herbivorous giant whose jaws served not only individual survival but also directly influenced the surrounding ecosystem. Shantungosaurus lived in the late Cretaceous, in a world covered by dense and flourishing vegetation. With a length that could exceed 15 meters and an estimated mass of more than 15 tons, its energy demands were immense. Each day, a single Shantungosaurus needed to consume enough plant matter to sustain an entire herd of smaller herbivores. To achieve this, its jaws did not need finesse but durability, power, and the ability to handle constant heavy use. The jaws of Shantungosaurus were not bizarre in appearance, yet they were extraordinarily effective in the right context. Its large, wide skull provided space for massive jaw muscles, enabling it to generate enough crushing force to process coarse, fibrous plants that many other herbivores avoided. Dense tooth surfaces functioned like enormous grinding plates, continuously wearing down and pulverizing vegetation before it was swallowed. Unlike selective grazers, Shantungosaurus could consume almost anything within reach. The presence of a herd of Shantungosaurus was not merely the appearance of giant animals, but a genuine ecological force. They could alter vegetation structures along their path, forcing environments to regenerate or adapt to their steady movement. Each individual Shantungosaurus was like a mobile biomass processing factory, slow yet relentless. Its strength lay not in speed or agility, but in sustained consumption and endurance. When evolution chose the path of gigantism, the jaws of Shantungosaurus became the core of that strategy. Not to refine each bite, but to process enormous volumes of food day after day. Shantungosaurus represents a different evolutionary route for herbivorous dinosaurs. Triumph not through refinement, but through overwhelming scale, where the jaws sustained not only the animal itself, but also helped shape the very environment in which it lived. If the jaws we have seen so far show how evolution can be refined, gigantic, or bizarre, then Conodont takes us to an entirely different level. Teeth that existed with almost no need for jaws at all. For more than a century, Conodont remained one of the greatest mysteries in paleontology. Not because they were rare, but because they were overwhelmingly common. So common that they puzzled scientists. Conodont first appeared more than 500 million years ago and persisted through many geological periods. Ironically, for hundreds of millions of years, the only thing humans ever found of them was teeth. Conodont fossils are often so small that they measure only a few millimeters, yet they come in a wide variety of shapes. Sharp spikes, curved blade-like forms, serrated edges, or hook-like structures. They appear in enormous quantities within ancient sediment layers, to the point that geologists even use them as index fossils to determine the age of rock strata. But what kind of creature possessed these teeth, what it looked like, and how it lived? All of that remained a major question. What makes conodonts truly special is this: they had teeth before true jaws ever evolved. While modern vertebrates all possess clear jaw structures to hold and control their teeth, conodonts followed a completely different path. Their teeth, often called conodont elements, were not attached to a familiar bony jaw, but arranged into a complex apparatus located in the mouth-throat region. This was not a jaw in the conventional sense, but rather a miniature tool system designed for a very specific feeding strategy. For decades, conodonts were even thought to be nothing more than the teeth of some unknown invertebrate. Only when rare fossils preserving soft tissues were discovered did the picture begin to clarify. Conodonts were actually primitive, fish-like animals without jaws, with slender bodies, well-developed eyes, and active swimming abilities. Their teeth were not used for biting and tearing in the traditional sense, but functioned as a combined system of blades, clamps, and grinders, processing food directly within the mouth cavity. What is especially fascinating is that conodont elements varied greatly in shape, with each form likely serving a different role: grasping prey, cutting, grinding, or even filtering. Taken as a whole, this system resembled a miniature processing line, where food passed through multiple stages before being swallowed. The ecological roles of conodonts were just as diverse. Some species may have been small predators, while others fed on plankton or organic debris. Regardless of their role, their jawless teeth were so efficient that conodonts became one of the most successful early vertebrate groups. When we think of hippos, the familiar image that comes to mind is a massive body, a mouth that can open astonishingly wide, and large canine teeth used to intimidate rivals. But if we travel back millions of years, an ancient relative of modern hippos, Hexaprotodon, possessed jaws that caught scientists' attention not because of their size, but because of their unusual incisor structure. Hexaprotodon lived across parts of Africa and Asia during the Neogene period, when river systems and wetland plains were rapidly expanding. Overall, its appearance was very much hippo-like: a heavy body, short legs, and adaptations for a semi-aquatic lifestyle. However, the most striking difference lay in the head, where the incisors were developed to an unusual degree compared to modern hippos. The name hexaprotodon comes from this feature: 6 large, clearly defined incisors arranged along the front of the jaw. These teeth were not sharp like those of carnivores, but thick, robust, and prominently protruding. They gave the skull of hexaprotodon a very different appearance: rough, imposing, and almost aggressive, even though the animal was primarily herbivorous. Interestingly, these unusual incisors were not used only for feeding. Based on tooth-wear patterns and jaw structure, many researchers believe the incisors of hexaprotodon played an important role in social behavior and territorial disputes. Much like modern hippos, individuals may have used their jaws and teeth to display strength, threaten rivals, or engage in direct confrontations. In such mouth-to-mouth clashes, large and powerful incisors provided a clear advantage. In addition, these incisors likely assisted in feeding. In riverine and swampy environments, uprooting aquatic plants, biting through tough grasses, or digging into soft mud to reach roots would have been common behaviors. The strongly developed incisors allowed hexaprotodon to handle coarse and fibrous food more effectively, especially in environments where food availability could change seasonally. The jaws of hexaprotodon reveal another facet of strangeness in the evolution of prehistoric teeth and jaws. Unusual traits are not always tied to extreme designs or grotesque shapes. Sometimes simply pushing a familiar feature to an extreme, such as greatly enlarged incisors, is enough to create a distinctly different survival strategy. If the previous jaws amazed us with their power, refinement, or sheer scale, then Platybelodon leaves an impression in a very different way. A level of strangeness that seems almost unbelievable yet makes complete sense. This was an ancient relative of modern elephants, living roughly from 15 to 4 million years ago, and its jaws look like something taken straight from a human-made tool. What made Platybelodon famous, and also the most controversial, was its flattened, wide lower jaw that extended forward, forming a structure almost identical to a shovel. Unlike modern elephant tusks, which are rounded and pointed, the tusks of Platybelodon were actually an extension of the lower jaw itself, with a flat surface and edges sharp enough to perform mechanical tasks. When looking at its fossilized skull, it is hard to believe this was a biological structure rather than a tool crafted by humans. For many years, scientists fiercely debated the true function of this bizarre jaw. Some suggested that Platybelodon used it to dig into the ground in search of roots. Others proposed that it functioned like a scraper, stripping bark from trees or cutting soft plant stems along riverbanks. More recent studies based on wear patterns found on fossils suggest that Platybelodon likely combined multiple functions: scooping, scraping, pulling, and gathering food toward the mouth. Unlike modern elephants, which use their flexible trunks to selectively choose food, Platybelodon appears to have followed a far more direct and forceful strategy. In wet floodplains, riverbanks, and open woodlands where vegetation grew dense and low, its shovel-like jaw allowed Platybelodon to harvest large amounts of food in a short time. This was a major advantage for a large animal with high energy demands. Importantly, the jaw of Platybelodon was not an evolutionary mistake. On the contrary, it clearly reflected the environmental pressures of its time. Among all the strange jaws that have appeared throughout the history of life, Eugeneodontia stands in a class of its own. Unlike any shark or vertebrate alive today, this group pushed the concept of teeth far beyond familiar limits, creating a structure that took scientists decades to understand how it even functioned. Eugeneodontia was a group of ancient cartilaginous fish that lived from the Carboniferous period to the early Triassic, a time when the oceans were dominated by experimental and unfamiliar life forms. The most unsettling feature of these animals was that their teeth were never replaced or shed like those of modern sharks. Instead, Eugeneodontia teeth continued to grow, stacking over time to form a continuous structure resembling a saw blade or a massive spiral. Most famously, some species possessed a tooth whorl coiled deep within the lower jaw. Rather than pointing outward to bite and tear, this structure worked as a pull and slice mechanism. When prey was captured, the jaws closed, drawing the victim deeper into the mouth while the spiraled tooth blades sliced through flesh with cold precision. This was not an instant killing bite, but a mechanical processing of prey, more like a machine than the action of a living animal. The strangeness of Eugeneodontia jaws lies not only in their shape, but in how they challenged every assumption about tooth evolution. In most animals, worn teeth are replaced to maintain function. With Eugeneodontia, evolution chose a different path, not replacing teeth but accumulating them. Over time, this made the tooth structure larger and more dangerous, turning each adult individual into a more complete living weapon than it had been when young. However, such extremity came with risks. A structure this specialized made adaptation difficult when environments changed. When marine ecosystems shifted dramatically at the end of the Triassic, predators with these unusual jaws gradually disappeared, replaced by sharks with more flexible and conventional designs. Eugeneodontia became a severed evolutionary branch, leaving behind fossils that still send a chill down the spine. When we think of prehistoric flying reptiles, we usually imagine aerial predators with sharp beaks, powerful jaws, and the ability to snatch prey in an instant. But Pterosaurs defied that image entirely. Rather than becoming a killer of the skies, this flying reptile chose a far more peaceful path. Filtering food from water, much like modern flamingos, Pterosaurs lived during the early Cretaceous period, primarily in what is now South America. In overall appearance, it retained all the typical traits of a pterosaur: long wings, a lightweight body, and efficient flight. However, what truly set Pterosaurs apart was its lower jaw, home to one of the strangest dental structures ever recorded in a vertebrate. Instead of large, sharp, or robust teeth, Pterosaurs possessed more than 1,000 slender, elongated teeth packed together like the bristles of a brush. These teeth were not meant for biting or grinding, but formed an extremely refined filtering system. When feeding, Pterosaurs lowered its head to the water, scooped up water and mud, then closed its jaws. Water and sediment flowed back out through the gaps between the teeth, while tiny organisms such as plankton larvae and organic particles were trapped and swallowed. This filtering jaw reveals a remarkably intelligent survival strategy. Rather than competing directly with other predators, both in the air and in the water, Pterosaurs exploited a food source that was abundant yet largely overlooked, though tiny aquatic microorganisms existed in vast and stable numbers. As a result, Pterosaurs could live in large groups much like modern flamingo flocks, feeding together in shallow lakes and wetlands. Notably, the filtering jaw of Pterosaurs was not as fragile as it appeared. Although the teeth were thin, they were densely packed and firmly anchored, strong enough to withstand continuous filtering of water and sediment over long periods. This is a clear example of how evolution does not only create terrifying weapons, but also produces tools of remarkable precision and energy efficiency. Pterosaurs provides a fascinating conclusion to the list of the strangest jaws of prehistoric times. After ferocious predators, massive grinding machines, and hellish saw blades, the appearance of a gentle filter-feeding flying reptile shows just how diverse the evolutionary picture truly was. Looking back, those strange jaws no longer seem as frightening as they did at first. They become something to be cherished, for they are the final traces of creatures that once lived, fed, and struggled to survive on this planet long before humans ever appeared. Each fossil is an interrupted story, a chapter of history never written in words. And perhaps the most thought-provoking realization is this: humans are not outside that same rule. The teeth we care for today, prized for beauty and convenience, are also only a temporary outcome of evolution. In the span of hundreds of millions of years, we are just as fragile as any species that came before us. If this video causes you to slow down for a moment and see the natural world through a different lens, then the journey has been worthwhile. Because understanding the past is not only about satisfying curiosity, but about recognizing our very small place within the immense flow of life. And sometimes it is precisely that sense of smallness that helps us appreciate the present more than ever.